Good morning.
Good morning.
All
How are you?
right. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I feel like I could just like wave and shout and you'd be able to hear me. I'm
Pretty
even in the
much.
West End of Toronto.
Yes, I know, eh? I honestly didn't know like your business were there. And I'm looking at all your posts. I'm like, this is brilliant. This is so smart. Why haven't I pointed people to you before? Like, it's so cool.
See, this is the magic of Instagram. Well,
Right.
and I originally found you because of
Yes.
Isadora Romatini, who is brilliant, and she's up in Markham.
Right.
So, we've got our little Southern Ontario connection hub going here.
Oh, absolutely. And so do you work in a studio? Do you own a studio? Like, what's your,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I have a bricks and mortar studio on Roncesvalles,
Okay.
so West End, Toronto, which is it's the most lovely little space. It's actually in a church, so it's this old
Okay.
building. It's like looking out in your living room. We have a fireplace and these beautiful full-fledged glass
Amazing.
windows, and you know, it's empty because pandemic.
Yes.
But
Yes.
we'll go back there someday. It'll be
Yeah.
great.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
yeah, I'm incredibly lucky that because we're in a church. It's not a main street space, so it's not a main street rent. So I will confidently still be there when the pandemic comes to an end.
Great.
There's
Yes.
too many people, man. Too many people have had to shut their physical doors, and you know, isn't this good that we have the capacity to go online
Yes.
and shift our businesses and help people stay in motion and stay somewhat connected? I think
Yeah.
movement's a big part of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So how long have you been at the location for?
That's a great question. Um, Time has ceased to mean anything to me over the last 10 months, but I think it was either 8 or 9 years in the fall.
Okay.
But I've been teaching in this neighborhood for almost 20 years.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was at the Village Healing Center, which is also in the church on Roncesvalles.
Okay.
And one of my best friends owns the healing center. And so I was teaching privates and very small classes in my basement, and I was teaching bigger classes there. And at one point, she's like, "Okay, so here's the thing. I'm firing you because it is time for you to step out, and the church is renting out this new space,
Yes.
and you're going to take it."
There
So,
you go.
so there you go. And that was the beginning. I have a great team of teachers. Um, so I run the studio as it's the teachers are my tenants. So they rent the
Yes.
time and space in the studio,
Right.
and then Boomerang just holds the money that the clients pay and then gives it back out to them,
Right.
which is a great business model for them because it means if their classes do well, they make more money. It's a
Hmm.
great model for me because there's less risk,
Yes. And they're
um,
motivated to make their classes big and
and they're motivated.
successful. Yeah.
Exactly. And it makes for a more egalitarian playing field, right? It's
Yes.
not a boss employee thing, and
Hmm.
so yeah, it's great. I love my team. They're awesome.
Yeah, and there's so many like little interesting pieces in there. Like first of all, getting fired in the best possible way.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
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 She was like, okay, you just it's time for you to step into a bigger space. It's time for you to step into into the next part of your path.
Yes.
And so that's part of what I do when I'm working with other teachers, right? So I also do mentoring and coaching and development work for other teachers.
Okay.
And I really like working with people who are like, well, but I'm happy in my small space, in my my small world space. And to
Yes.
be like, you know what? I think there's probably a bigger world for you to step into. Let's see
Yes.
if we can find that space to expand, and whether that means opening your own studio, or that means teaching online, or that means expanding your offerings, right? So
Hmm.
as you said earlier, I don't I'm a Pilates teacher, but I don't teach a lot of traditional Pilates. Mostly I teach movement stuff that I make up that's very kind of mobility and alignment and
Yeah.
exploration and play based.
Yes.
Um, and it was a little challenging integrating that into the work that I used to do
Hmm.
10, 12, 15 years ago. And so that's one of the other things is like maybe you're expanding your space because you've learned new stuff. The movement world is so full of more than it
Right.
was back when I started, right? When I
Yes.
started, we were a little more in our silos, right? There was
Hmm.
Pilates and there was yoga and there was personal training and there was lifting
Yes. And group
and there
fitness.
was,
Yes.
there you go. Those are your
Yeah.
things.
Right. Yeah.
Stay in your lane, man. Stay in your lane.
Hmm.
Not in a good way, not in a respectful way, but in a don't step over the line kind of way.
Yes.
And I don't think that's so much the case anymore. I think the movement world has started to see that,
Hmm.
like a lot of what you've done in terms of men can do Pilates, lifters can do Pilates, runners can do Pilates, Pilates people can do MoveNet and Animal Flow, and we can we can take all this stuff and pull it together.
Yes.
But sometimes that's a little bit challenging to do, and it can be challenging to do with language and um, and an approach that your existing clients go, oh, this new stuff is really cool, instead of going, oh,
I
this new
don't know
stuff
about
is
it.
a bit
Yeah.
off-putting and it's not what I expect.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's just it. And you said that in one of your posts about, how do we expand and explore movement and combine modalities as a trainer? And we've talked about that a lot here on, core conversations where it's like, well, have words around it. And the way I've done it in the past is, okay, we're doing some Pilates thing and I recognize someone's hip or their knee is tight, and I say, okay, we're leaving Pilates land for a moment. Let's do a couple of these things, see how it works, and then we'll come back over to whatever. So people understand what they're doing as well. Because I think part of our process and duty as instructors or teachers or coaches or however you want to frame that is to let people to give people education on their body and education on how the work and what the work they're doing is, right? Um,
Yeah.
and we've seen it before where you go to a Pilates class and they teach yoga the whole time. And there's nothing wrong with that, except for people thinking that they just did a Pilates class when they just did a yoga class, right? So like,
Yeah.
just let's educate people on what they're actually doing.
What they're doing. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Oh, I was having a thought. And the thought
That's
has
good.
gone. The thought has left. It's
That's
gone
good.
somewhere else.
That's okay. I have some more business questions for you while we're
Sure.
just open
Go
with
for
that
it.
because I see like Slam Dunkin Wellness and who was on last week, which is a B, and she has just maybe last year I think it is started like more online classes and expanding her business. And there's other people out there that are great movers and are just exploring what the potential of their business is. So I
Yeah.
love to hear the fact that had a good thing going and someone's like, you can do more, get out and do it. And
Yeah.
then to just find a real organic way to grow your business with a team that allows everyone to still have some ownership of their business without you being a manager and getting in that dangerous place of micromanaging and all that stuff. Like you just found an organic flow and it made it from the outside looking in. That sounds like it's just easy and I could just do the same thing. Um, but it's not always that smooth, right?
It's not always entirely that smooth. I mean, there's still, push comes to shove, it's still my business.
Yes.
Um, so the technical stuff is mine to manage, right? The taxes and the rent and the relationship
Yes.
with the church and all that kind of thing.
Mhm.
I've been
Frozen. You must have got like a call or something coming in.
there.
Mhm.
Um, I've been incredibly lucky in that the people who have felt called to come and teach at Boomerang they're all amazing. They're all fantastic. And people have ebbed and flowed and life changes and people move. And
Yes.
sometimes what happens, because I'm not employing people, there's no guarantee.
Hmm.
We're a small neighborhood studio and physically a small studio.
Yes.
And there is some effort that goes into filling the classes. And it's not the same as going and working at a big studio where you can just be sure there's going to be 10 people in your class no matter what.
Yes.
And so there have been some interesting conversations around, you know what, this isn't working.
Mm-hmm.
You know, somebody will come to me and be like, I'm only getting like 4 people in my class. I'm like, okay, well, we've got you on the website and we're mentioning you on social media. And some people will say, oh, part of this experience has been realizing that what works for me is to go and work at a big studio. I'm not really meant to be
Yes.
self-employed, right? Because if you're
Right.
a self-employed
Yep.
teacher, there's marketing involved, there's social media involved, you need to keep track of your money, there's accounting involved, there's taxes, like there's a whole layer of stuff that you need to be in charge of. And some people really thrive on
Yes.
that and they really enjoy it. And for some people, it's just not a thing. That's not where they want to be. And what makes sense is that they take their energy and their what makes them compelling and fascinating teachers and share that with a bigger organization so that there's that really lovely
Yes.
dynamic of what makes different spaces and different situations work for different people. Right? If we were
Mm.
all the same, that wouldn't be very fun.
No, it wouldn't exactly. That reminds me of the days of back in the day when I was working in big box gyms and training personal trainers and having those hard conversations about the fact that you are here because you love movement and you want to make a difference in people's lives, and then you realize that actually you are a salesperson and you are selling yourself, and the better
Mm-hmm.
you are at selling, the more people you're going to have in front of you to make that change and to change people's lives and do a lot of stuff. But sometimes they want to just, it's like a doctor. You became a doctor to be able to help people, not to manage an office and manage admin staff and to, speak to the government and stuff. So we get into this place where we don't realize that there's so many different layers to these jobs. And some
Yeah.
people are cut out for that and they'll follow in your footsteps. And other people will be like, I just want to be a face in the crowd, help people and go home.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that is totally fine as well.
Yeah. And I think there's space for all of that. And it's
There
part
is
of
space for all that. Yeah.
yeah. And it's part of the work we need to do.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that makes for good teachers is if you spend a little bit of time reflecting and you think about, well, what really makes your heart sing? How do
Yes.
you want to help your people?
Yes.
Do you want to be in a big gym? Do you want to be in a small studio? Do you want to be in your own basement? Do you want to be in person? Do you want to be online? I love teaching online. And
I'm enjoying it as well. Yeah.
yeah, like I've always done some of it because I tend to have some clients who are physically distant.
Mhm.
Um, and I love doing the online coaching part, like the chat part with teachers.
Yep.
But the pandemic, I'm like, okay, well, this is upping my queuing because you
Yes.
you cannot take the easy way out. You can't be like, hey, move your back in towards my hand. Just
Right.
get that, just ease. Got to find ways to communicate that.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that I mentioned when we were chatting about what we wanted to talk about is I I put out a message to some people in my Facebook group and I was like, hey, how are you guys feeling these days?
Hmm.
And I was really largely expecting to hear, you know, overwhelmed,
Woe is
fatigued,
me. Yes.
tired of being on Zoom, worried about my money, worried like I was expecting to hear fairly down, down tone answers. And I got a couple of those, but I got a surprising amount of excited, really looking forward, excited about changes, excited to learn, had more time to take more courses because I'm not having to travel,
Right.
excited to realize that I can work online and make a living. And I think there's been, I mean, and this is not like a toxic positivity, ooh, find the sunshine, because I'm a little like that. I'm kind of a sunshine and unicorns girl.
Right.
Um, but the pandemic has been terrible for a lot of people in a lot of different ways.
In different ways. Yeah.
But I was pleasantly surprised to find the number of people who have found something good about it, whether that's my teaching skills have increased
Right.
because of this, or my client base has increased because of this, or just I've learned I have technical skills that I would never have been pushed to learn if it
Yes.
weren't for this.
Right.
Right? I love that people are sort of finding ways to grow their business and grow their teaching skills in the middle of what is a very challenging year.
Absolutely. And it's I call this like a tree planting or a seed planting season,
Yes. Oh, that's a great way to describe it.
right? And you know, because like you're planting seeds. 2020 for me was just planting seeds for things that I know will grow in 2021, 22, building these relationships and making these connections and just celebrating the people that are doing great work and all these different things. They set us up for, you know, more classes, you know, clients overseas, virtually, workshop opportunities, virtual workshops, you know,
Yep.
collaborations, finding other people who are doing the same thing as you on the other side of the world. And now you can do this together. Like you're going to save
Yeah.
yourself 7 steps you don't have to figure out on your own because you have a buddy in Switzerland who's doing the exact same thing as you. Like,
Yeah.
there you go, right?
Yeah. It's brilliant. Oh, oh, wow. Sorry. I'm being a cat nana right now, and I'm
Okay.
looking after my daughter's cat. So we had this cat we had a cat named Martin.
Oh, really?
We did.
Distinguished name, yes.
It is a distinguished name. We got two cats when my kids were really little, and I don't know, your kids are little, right?
18, 15, 16,
Okay,
13.
not little. Never mind. So maybe you remember that our cats were named after the hosts from the TV show Zaboomafoo. Do you remember Zaboomafoo?
Yes, yeah,
Martin and Chris.
yes.
So we had cats, and we had a cat named Martin. Martin left us this summer. He was 21, and
What?
he absolutely would not have been jumping up. So I keep being startled by the fact that we have this cat in the house who is super
Mobile
agile.
as you? Yes,
Yeah.
yes. That's too funny. One last kind of comment on the business things. I have some like more of these like verbal cues questions for you. When I was starting out in my business, I had a mentor who sat me down one day and he said to me, "You are not a personal trainer. You are a business owner, and your product happens to be fitness."
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And that really changed the way I looked at it because I was really keen on being, you know, a small business owner and being an entrepreneur and just expanding my business as much as I can. And when he said that, that made so much sense to me because, you know, he's like, you can change, you know, you could decide to sell socks the rest of your life and you're going to use the same principles as you are right now, trying to get people to connect to your programs to help them lose weight or to get stronger, whatever you're doing. So learn those principles and then you can kind of sub out and sub in whatever you want because you're a business owner and your product is. And now my product is Pilates, where it was personal training when I started, and now it's movement. It's not just Pilates. Like it keeps expanding and moving into different things. And because that principle is I'm a business owner and my product is instead of I am a movement
Yeah.
teacher, right? So,
That's a great way of looking at it.
mhm,
And then that helps, even if that's not what the clients see from the front end, but things like, oh, like I've just discovered this great new movement modality. It doesn't have to change who you are. It just expands your business to include another department.
exactly. Like when I had Akil Augustine on and he said, I'm a storyteller. When the reality is he's a host for the NBA, you know, for the Raptors, on TV analyst and all these different things. He's like, I'm a storyteller,
Yeah.
right? So what is your title? Like, what does your business card say? Who do you say that you are?
Oof.
I didn't realize it was that hard of a question.
It is a hard question. I would say I'm a movement nerd.
Okay. What does that
Like
mean? Says the
it,
person on the street.
um, it means that you can trust me when I work with you to get really curious and really detailed about what you need.
I need a 6 pack. Can you help me?
Hmm.
Hmm.
I can, but I might send you to my friend Martin instead.
Oh, really? Because that's what people do, right? Like you come and then
Yeah.
you realize what they want, and you look at the move, and you're like, let's look at your feet first. Like, you know.
Yes, let's look at feet. Yeah, I am a little bit when I start working with clients, I'm typically pretty clear before I take somebody on that if you're looking for a six pack, I'm not your girl.
Mhm.
And there's nothing wrong with wanting a six pack. And I absolutely support people moving in whatever way is most fulfilling and compelling for them. But you
Yes.
need to find the teacher who really wants to do that with you. Like you need
Yes.
to go on that journey together and you need to be equally excited about where you want to go to.
Yes.
And so
I loved your words
my
fulfilling and compelling. Sorry, I just had to write that down. That's really cool.
yeah, like you need to be excited when you go to work. I mean,
Yes.
yes, we are business owners, but part of what we're selling is relationship and connection.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And part of the way you develop relationship and connection is you be excited about what you're doing with your, your customer, your student, your client, your, whatever it is that you're doing. If you're selling socks, you better really like socks or your
Yes.
day is going to be not so
Yeah.
exciting.
Right. Yes.
So really, like I'm a mobility and brain connection specialist.
Yes.
I'm really most interested in helping clients improve their brain mapping skills. Like when you think you're
Yes.
moving in your shoulder joint, are you really moving in your shoulder joint? Let's find your shoulder joint. Let's fall in love with your shoulder joint. Let's
Hmm.
figure out what is getting in the way of moving in your shoulder joint. Do you
Yes.
know what your shoulder joint is? Do you know what your hip joint is? Your hip joint is not the lovely parts that people want to pat because you got a great butt.
Hmm.
Your hip joint is an anatomical structure. Let's figure it out. Let's learn about it. And it's detailed and it's finicky. And it also involves a lot of playing around and not like, and so you need to move your hip joint like this, but more
Yes.
about like, how does your hip joint move? Let's find it. Let's
Hmm.
figure out what it is. Let's figure out what your brain hears and thinks when I say hip joint or shoulder joint or spine or whatever it might be.
Yes.
And then let's just move. What does your body do? Where do you go? How does it feel? Does it
Yes.
feel? Do you have any sense of connection to that area? It would be good if you did. Let's figure out how to get that. Okay, now let's load it. Let's put some
Mm.
resistance in there. Internal resistance, external resistance. Okay, now let's go back and move it again. How does that feel? Okay, now let's release it. Least exciting thing to do ever. Let's prop you up with lots of bolsters and things so that you can't feel anything and hang out there.
Yes.
But then now let's move you again. How does that feel? So
Yes.
it's not my work's not fat. I mean, I have some athletic clients and we do some super fun hanging upside down and working on crazy Cadillac things. And
Yes.
I had one client where we were working on the dreaded squirrel for a while. You know that like
Yes.
weird one with the
Yeah.
swinging back and forth.
Yeah.
But mostly I'm a small finicky movement specialist.
That's
And
amazing.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. It
Yes.
makes me so happy taking somebody who really doesn't move a lot or doesn't move happily or comfortably and bringing them, we go along this journey together and we find a
Yes.
place where they can move really well. Or
Hmm.
taking somebody who moves really well and being like, okay, you can do this super awesome thing. Now
Yes.
let's see if you can create resistance with your fingers and circle one finger without losing that internal tension.
Wow. Yes. That's so cool to me. Other people, who knows? I'm just like
I am not everybody's teacher.
that's no one,
I'm
but no one
not.
is. I mean, I think that's
No,
it. Like, the
I'm
Kai
not.
had that one line, like, who is your Joseph, right? Who's that Joseph Pilates person for you?
Yeah,
And you are that for so many people, and more people than realize they need it. Like, I think that's the kind of thing where people can move fast, but they're not moving well.
yeah.
And how do you
And
do moving
so
well?
and so I think that's one of the reasons why it's great to work with multiple coaches, multiple teachers, right? And
Yes.
obviously not everybody can do, multiple privates. That's not really accessible for most of us, but you can take classes with different people.
Yes.
Take classes with someone who really focuses on a workout. Take classes with someone who focuses on mobility. Take classes with someone who focuses on the more neurological aspects of movement.
Hmm.
Take classes with somebody who wants to work on strength. Find all the different nooks and crannies, and you're going to develop a more rigorous, more nuanced movement education. And that applies
Absolutely.
if you're a teacher as well, right? Work with
Absolutely.
different kinds of teachers, different kinds of coaches, different kinds of mentors, read books, take classes online,
Yep.
and you'll learn more. You'll be a better teacher.
You will. That I had this flashback to when I was at university, and in the off season, I would train at University of Toronto. Oh, you're in Canada. Okay, I don't have to give like these.
I know the U of T's.
Okay, cool. So I played football at Waterloo, and in the off seasons, I trained at UTM, University of Toronto, Mississauga campus. Like, so the Argos would train there and all these different things. And I remember, working on my bench press and trying to get my big numbers for my bench press for our test out the following year. And there was this black guy that came in the gym all the time, and he was like really skinny. Like I was just really trying to bulk up to be strong. And this guy would go up and do like windshield wipers, like, chin ups where you're pulling yourself up, straight legs down to one side, and then the other. You do all these crazy mobility things. And then I'd spot him on the bench and he'd do like 135 pounds. And I'm like, that's kind of soft. I'm trying to rep out 225. And then he'd do something over there and I'm like, I can't do that. And after that, I wasn't like, I want to be able to do windshield wipers. I was like, I want to be able to do both.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to get 225 for 25 reps, and I want to be able to do windshield wipers all day, sort of things. So I was trying to. That's my first kind of introduction to mobility and body weight and just the crazy things that our body can do. When I was in this one-dimensional, how do I get my numbers big for test out
Yeah. Yeah.
type thing, right? So
But there was a really big external motivation for you to get
yes,
your numbers up.
yes,
There's an event that's going to be here, and
yes,
I have to achieve a certain level in order to move forward. That's a
right,
really strong external motivation.
yes, yeah, and that's a good point. Sorry, go ahead.
And did your numbers go up? Did your lift improve as you started your mobility work?
Well, I didn't start my mobility work till after that. I just couldn't afford to like not get those numbers. But I hope that stayed with me. And then there was times where I'd try and sneak up and do like make sure he wasn't in the gym and try them, and then you know just do it when he's not looking. Um, so it took some years to be able to get that, but that's the sort of thing where, like you're saying, there was a motivator to get those big numbers, and
Yeah.
there's also like there's empirical evidence, right? Like I did 200 this week, and now it's 225. If I'm trying to do mobility, like I have one more degree of shoulder, like how do you really measure that, right? It's basically a qualitative feel as opposed to a quantitative number.
Yeah. Um, I'm reading The Language of Coaching by Nick Winkelman these days. It's
Okay.
great,
Okay.
super fun book.
Yeah, I can look that
And
up.
he taught. So it's about a lot of it is about cueing, right? And one
Okay.
of the things he says is, how did you know what to say? How did you know when to say it?
Mm,
How did you know when to stop saying it? When to stop talking? How much to say? And then he says, and how did you know it worked? And
yes.
that's one of the things that is, I think it's a little easier to deal with in more of the personal training lifting world where you have an external number.
Yes.
I ran this fast. I lifted this much weight. Like there's something really measurable. And yeah, when we get into mobility work or we get into, how do you gauge how great was that teaser?
Yes.
Was
Right.
that about your control? Was it about your hip hinge? Was it about you were able to get into the extension phase? It was about, like
Like what?
there's
Yes.
stuff that you can measure, but it's
Subjective.
it's more subjective, exactly. And so I think for me, that's partly where this idea of body mapping comes into play,
Okay.
because then it's less an agency, right?
Hmm.
The control for the mover rather than me, the coach.
Yes.
Because then it's less about me standing back and going, okay, well, according to my stopwatch, you
Yes.
really did an awesome job of moving your shoulder joint. And it becomes more about the reporting back from the student that says, I really felt that I had more control in the lift.
Yes.
I felt like I was better able to get backswing when I was
In
running,
that phase.
and it was
Yes.
like I wasn't having to rotate as much because I actually could move my arms. there becomes a more situational recognition of how the movement is working better, working more smoothly.
Yes.
And it is something the client has achieved. It's something the student has achieved,
Mhm.
right? I
So,
provide some tools, I
yes.
provide a roadmap, but
Mhm.
they're the ones doing the work. And so they're the ones doing the reporting. I
But
can
it's,
look at it and be like, well, I've been watching bodies for a really long time, and I can see that.
mhm.
Or we can provide visible, sometimes what we feel is not the best tool,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So some objective markers, even in, excuse me.
Yes.
Yeah, sure. It's
I
The
put
Language of Coaching.
the language of coaching.
Yep. And the author is Nick Winkelman, and it's great. He's from the football world, so he's definitely from the more of the trainer element, but he's a smart guy. And he's like, this book is written for anybody who does any cueing. So
Yes.
whether you're a PT working with stroke victims or you are a high-end football coach,
High
we're all
performance.
doing the same thing,
Yes.
which is we're trying to help people move better,
Yes.
regardless of where their starting point is.
So my question with that then is, do we have to give our clients the language to explain what's happening too? Like, I'm going to have you do this and you should feel this, or do we just let them go and let them find their words?
My favorite answer to that kind of question is yes, no, and it depends.
Yes. Every good coach has that answer. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, it depends. It depends on where they are in their movement journey. It depends on what their goals are. I have clients who, I have a client I have been working with for, I don't know, probably 18 years. And she's like, I don't get it. She's got some neurological stuff. There's good reasons for why she says it, so I'll predicate that by saying she's not being lazy. She's got real reasons why she says this.
Yes.
She's like, this is why I pay you. I don't really need to know. I just need
Mm-hmm.
you to tell me how to keep going so that I can walk until I'm 100. That's our goal. Keep
Yeah.
her walking until she's 100.
Right.
It's an awesome goal. I
Yes.
have clients who really want to know. They want to know every detail,
Yes.
and
What
they
muscle
don't.
fiber is
Yep.
firing right now? Yes.
And they don't really move well without that information, and that becomes our challenge. It's like, okay,
Mm.
I know you don't love this, but I'm going to ask you to just move your arm in a circle.
Yes.
Just, I know it's not your favorite, but just go for it and just do it. And then we'll break it down. Okay, we're going to do this and that, and we're going to go into extension and give her all the details.
Yes.
Um, I don't think we always have to give information, but I also think we shouldn't withhold information. There's,
Yes.
right, the attitudes
Right.
towards doing really swing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a pendulum of, and you think this, anyway, there's a pendulum that swings. And
Yes.
sometimes there's this whole like, your students don't need all this information. Don't talk so much.
Don't
Just
overcoach.
don't overcoach. Just, let them do it and their bodies will figure it out. And then the other pendulum is, you know, really dive in, give them every single detail, every single time of every single moment.
Yes.
I probably am more on that side of the pendulum.
Mm-hmm.
Because my goal is not so much the I've just lost the word.
Like the volume of exercise as opposed to the quality of movement sort of thing.
No, the acquisition phase, the retention phase, and the
Auto, autonomic.
yes, the autonomic phase.
Yes.
So my work is actually more in the acquisition
Okay.
phase of things, right? Because it's about this idea of finding precision of movement and actually feeling that movement.
Yes.
For most people, some people don't feel, and we have other ways to manage that.
Mm-hmm.
But my stuff is about really honing in on the acquisition phase so that you can get into the flow a little bit later.
Yes. Yeah.
That stage requires more language and more talking. That's the deal.
Yes.
But that said, sometimes you just need to let people move.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
Just let them go, let them have fun.
Yes.
And I really try to avoid the right wrong thing.
Before we dive into the right wrong thing, because I love what you're saying about the right wrongs and goods and yummies and all those words, right? One of the phrases that I took from one of my teacher training, which I've always used, is having an economy of words.
Mm-hmm.
And like you're saying, having that sweet spot between overcoaching and undercoaching, just letting them move and then like telling them where their, what degree their left toe needs to be on. There's something in between those two. And in Pilates, it's been called this economy of words. And when I was in like doing a lot of boot camps back in the day, a friend of mine said, or a coach said, if you can't explain it in 9 seconds, then move on to another exercise. Like just be able to find the words, you can get them moving safely, correctly, and move on. So I've always been trained to just find the right words to get people moving, and then you can move, and then you can pounce when they need a little adjustment, and you can let them move again, right? Like that's so yeah. So there is that sweet spot, and for every person, as you know, it's going to be different. One person is going to want to know every minute detail of the movement, and someone else is just not going to care as long as they get to sweat today from safe movement.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that, I think that's part of the fun part is, if you've got 12 people in a class and they all
Yes.
respond to slightly different things,
Mm-hmm.
how do you find the language to make sure that you're meeting what everybody wants and needs in that group? And
Yeah.
that sometimes means, hey, I know some of you are just ready to go, so you can just tune me out. I'm going to get a bit detailed here.
Yes.
You guys are good. If you want to just keep moving, go for it. If you are more of the detail person, we're going to dive in here.
Mm-hmm.
Or vice versa. I know some of you are going to want to hear more about this, but for the moment, just be patient with the people who need a little extra space. We're going to just go for this. Like you have to be, it's not a secret.
Right.
Like it's not a secret that different people want and need different things. And I don't think it's a problem to be like, hey, I'm doing something right now that some of you don't love.
Right.
It's not your turn. It's going to be your turn in a moment. We're
It's
going to
like
deal with what,
kindergarten, right? Like,
yeah.
just wait right here, Johnny. I'll be right back. Yes.
And there's the thing about don't demonstrate. Don't demonstrate, just explain. I have one client who is paralyzed if she can't see what the movement looks like.
Yes.
And that became actually really apparent during the pandemic. Because
Yes.
at one point I was like, okay, so I'm just talking through stuff. I'm looking at the screen, and she's just sitting there.
Frozen. Yeah.
She's like, and I can see her shaking her head. I was like, oh yeah, of course. I need to get on the mat. I need to go through it. She needs to be able to see it.
Yes.
Oh, and then she's fine. She's
Yep.
good.
Right. Yeah, it's fascinating, and one of the first questions, I think when Brett Howard was on, we were talking about it. He was saying the first thing he does when he looks in the room is saying, what kind of learners do I have in the room?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like tactile, obviously, tactile's out the window when you're virtual, but I mean, not necessarily. You can get them to touch and figure things out, palpitate themselves, but but yeah, so that question is one of the key questions we need to ask ourselves too. What kind of learners do we have before we start this movement journey?
Yeah.
Right. So, but getting back to words though, you're just saying about like words like good, and like what is your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I had this. This is one of the things I love about teaching. It is a never-ending journey of discovery.
Yes.
Um, as I mentioned, I am a relentlessly cheerful human. My internal landscape is usually sunny and has rainbows and green grass, and it's just
Yeah.
the way, like that's just the way I am. Um, and so I tend to be really positive in my communication and my cueing. And so there are particular kinds of movements, and releases are one of them, where I would say, we're looking for something to feel good. We want it to feel, you know, we want it to feel awesome. You want it to feel yummy. And if it doesn't, that doesn't mean it's not right for you. It just means we need to change it. So you want to make it
Make a
smaller,
little
make it
pivot,
bigger,
or yeah,
more,
exactly.
right? And so what I was trying to elicit was a sense that this is not a position in which if it doesn't feel good, it's just not for you.
Okay.
Or if it doesn't feel good, it just doesn't feel good. It's a horrible shape. It's no, your nervous system is giving you a message to change something, that we can change this to make it feel better. And then I was having a conversation with my friend Marta. We just did this lovely conversation about trauma, and she's done lots of work with trauma. I have a history of chronic pain. I had fibromyalgia for years. So it's interesting the way my brain has overcome my own personal experience. I had some childhood trauma stuff that whatever, like this stuff is not unfamiliar to me. And
Yes.
and
Yes.
and I work with a lot of people who have sensitivities to this stuff. So we're having a conversation, and she said, but what if it never feels good? Ever? What if
Hmm.
your body never gets to the point where it feels good? I was like, oh my God, I am using language that I'm not intentionally excluding people who have a different body experience, but I really love being in my body. Being in my body is a happy place for me, even though I did experience years of chronic pain, and I don't anymore. But for people who do not experience being in their body as a positive experience,
Right.
being told, keep playing around with this position until it feels really good is not inclusive. It is
No.
not welcoming. It is not
Discouraging.
supportive. It's discouraging. And then it makes them feel like either they're doing something wrong, which they're not, or that I'm not trustworthy, that
Hmm.
I'm asking something of them or I'm implying something is possible that their lived experience suggests is not possible.
Yes.
It's like, oh man, I am not conveying effectively what I'm really trying to say.
Right.
And so that was, that's 18 and a half years into my teaching journey with a pretty strong background that would indicate I should actually,
Bit a bit more
have
sensitive to
conveyed
that.
that better.
Yes. So then what's the pivot that you make? You change your wording to do you have different expectations, manage expectations differently for the person? Like where is the
Yeah.
pivot that needs to be made?
For me, it means I need to talk a little bit more. And I was actually thinking about this in class just yesterday. Yesterday? What day is today? Monday. Saturday. I was thinking about this on Saturday
Mhm.
because time means nothing during the pandemic.
Right.
Where we were in fact going into a shape where again my need was for them to find a place where there was no additional tension or additional discomfort. So this shape could have a range of possibilities.
Okay.
If it's possible for you to get yourself to a place where this feels really good, that would be great.
Yes.
If that's not going to happen for you, what I would love you to play around with and find is either there isn't really any sensation, you're kind of at a body neutral, brain neutral,
Okay.
or at least this is as good as it gets. That we're not adding any additional strain or stress or
Yes.
discomfort, that we're going to go for as good as it gets for you. And that
Yeah.
felt okay. And it only took me an extra, 30 seconds of talking
Right. Right.
for a shape that they were going to be in for 2 or 3 minutes. So
Right.
proportionately, that didn't feel like, oh, that's an unreasonable amount of talking to do.
Mhm.
But I think that's one of the other things that comes into play for me is what's your narrative? What's your history? What do you bring to
Yes.
the table?
Yes.
And 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 that could go in both directions,
Hmm.
right?
No,
The other part of
absolutely.
the
Yeah.
conversation that we were having is if you are a person, if you're the teacher or the coach and you don't really experience your body as being a great place and your approach to movement is a little bit more kind of off to the we're gonna tough out and do this,
Mhm.
it might be really weird to come across students who are like, oh no, this is awesome.
Yes.
What?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So knowing what your own defaults are and making sure that you don't assume everybody else has the same default
That's a huge takeaway out of that for sure.
And
Yeah.
it can be sneaky because I spend a lot of time thinking about this stuff,
Hmm.
an unreasonable amount of time thinking about this stuff. And it just went right over my head because that's my default is that that's achievable, even
Right.
though I know it's not really achievable for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. That is interesting. Yeah. The process starts with every person in front of us, right? Like that is the deepest possible layer of that teach to the body in front of you narrative.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I really do think is really important. I think it
Yes.
is important to be um, you're in relationship with everybody who is everybody who is honoring you with trusting you with their body
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
and their brain, right? The whole idea of like the mind body connection as
Yes.
though it was two separate things.
No, right. Yeah.
No, that the mind is your brain, which is in your body, and without it, you're not doing anything.
Right.
So yeah, they're both important
Yes.
in certain kinds of teaching, right? And if you just want to do a boot camp thing and get your sweat on and have a really good big workout and it's safe and everybody's having fun,
Have at it.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
important too.
Yeah. Can you talk about your workshop in our final few minutes here? Because we just blew through
Oh,
53 minutes.
I did say I can talk about pretty much
Yeah.
anything.
No, this is so interesting.
Yeah, so I have a teachers development workshop coming up
Okay.
called the Movement Teachers Roadmap, which is a 12-week online kind of small group coaching process
Okay.
meant for teachers who've been teaching for a while and are ready to level up, and
Nice.
they're ready to refine their teaching, refine their skills, really figure out who they are, who their perfect clients are, how to deal with the not perfect clients, because we will all have the clients we adore and we will all
Yes.
have the clients we adore less.
Well said.
And over the course of that 12 weeks, each person will build a workshop, and that
Okay.
workshop will reflect like where they are right now,
And their air passion.
their real passion.
Yes.
And as we go through, the people will get feedback from me. So I'll be present for part of that development process. We'll break up into rooms so people can work together to get
Fantastic.
feedback from peers. And then as we get towards the end, we'll work on marketing a little
Hmm.
bit. It's not my
Yes.
specialty, but like you said, it's part of the job. And
Yes.
so here's an actual thing instead of just sort of imaginary marketing. Here's your thing. How do you do this without feeling salesy? Because this is presumably something that you love. There are going to be some fantastic guest contributors,
Okay.
including Marta. We're going to do a segment on, as she says, taking the trauma out of dealing with trauma in your classes
Okay. Yes.
to just let's settle it all down a little bit and not get too worried about it.
Yes.
Websites and emails from a friend of mine, marketing and copywriting from a friend of mine.
Yes.
But yeah, I think it's going to be great. It'll be a small group, so lots of personal attention
That
and
sounds
lots of
fast. Just
yeah,
fantastic. Yeah.
yeah, I'm very excited about it.
Nice.
And actually, other than my newsletter list and my private group, this is the first time I have mentioned it in public.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
There you
you're
go.
my launch pad.
Amazing. I'm gonna put like in the comment section under IGTV, where's the best place to connect with you to find out more about that?
Well, certainly people could just DM me. There will be a webinar. There will be a webinar on February 2nd, and actually I can send you the link for that, which I
Sure.
don't have handy, but I can get it to you.
Okay. Yeah, just put it in the
Retail.
comment section.
Yeah,
Yeah, I love it. If you can get to the speed networking on Friday, that'd be great to just connect with people
I will
globally on that.
so be there. I will so
Yeah,
be there.
that's a really exciting business mastermind crash course, ultimately, what you're doing.
Yeah. I think really if you're going to be a successful teacher, if you're going to be a teacher with a lot, like I've been teaching for almost 20 years now, and I love what I do every day.
Yes.
And I think the way you get there is you dive in and you figure out who you are. Who are you as a person and a human? Who are you as a teacher? What do you bring? What makes you because everybody's got something that makes them special and makes them
Yes.
appeal to particular people. You don't have to
Hmm.
appeal to everybody,
Right.
right? Appeal to everybody, and you're spreading everything too thin.
Right.
Really
Exactly.
figure out what do you love and who wants to work with what you love.
Yes.
And then you can
Amazing.
grow.
Yeah. Alison, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thanks for having me. This
That
is
was,
great.
oh man, this is so good. I love to just like geek out on like movements, and this was
I know it's
so
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 fun.
good. I hope everyone enjoyed that. There's some comments that came through, and I just kind of ignored them because I was like so compelled. So, so, so thank you so much. I'll have the replay later, and yeah, to everyone who's been watching, we have some super fun people all week, so it's going to be more of this kind
Oh
of stuff.
yeah, and I will so be here to listen to Alwyn. She's a delight.
Yeah,
She and
yeah.
I tried to, we've met up in person, but we haven't like been able to go out on our own. And then there was this stupid pandemic.
Yes.
So I'm going to use her conversation with you as a chance to hear what she's got to say about the world.
There you go. Perfect. All right.
Thanks to everybody
Thanks
who
so
showed
much.
up.
Thanks. All right. Take care.
Bye.